Welcome, everyone, to episode 77 of the Phoenix Report. I am Jack Connor, and this particular guest, and I feel like I say this about a lot of the guests I have on, but this guy in particular is someone I've known for a very long time. I've wanted to get this guy on this show since I started doing this back in 2015. He's definitely a guy who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, and is really, even though he moved far away a long time ago, and we haven't seen each other as much as I would have liked to. He's one of those guys where I consider to be one of my best friends in the business. A guy who I really felt like he and I were cut from the same cloth, and I felt like he and I played together for a while, and it was a short time, but I think in that time, I feel like we kind of brought out the best of each other. And this goes back to I want to say 2008. And I've told a lot of people, anyone who's been following my career for any amount of time knows that I was in a few bands over the years. Started with Lives Page, my first band when I was in college, and then later WMP, which sort of became Impatient Nation, which is the first band that I ever, well, actually not the first band that I ever sang lead for, as it turns out. But that was the first band that I recorded an EP with my lead vocals on it, the Impatient Nation record. The Lives Page stuff I played bass on. And then, because of that experience, eventually I formed Vertebreaker in 2013, which I'm still part of now. I'm like the only original guy left, but that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to talk about a band that I was a part of through the early winter and spring of 2009. It was a band called Cobalt Blue. It's a band that I haven't really talked about too much, just because, and nothing against anyone who was in that band. It was just sort of just a brief sort of chapter. It was only a few months that I was with these guys, but it was the first band that I ever was the lead singer for. And that was a new experience for me. And I always knew that I could sing. I always wanted to sing lead, but I never really got a lot of the opportunities, or at least I would try to get stuff going when I was in high school, but it just never really panned out. So I want to take you guys back to, I'm going to say, the fall and winter of 2008. At this point, I'm about 24. I'm in graduate school at University of South Florida. I end up, moving back home with my parents, going to grad school. It wasn't a particularly happy time in my life. I had gotten out of a really serious relationship. It was an engagement, actually. So I wasn't really sure where my life was going, but I knew that I was still going to school. I was working jobs here and there just to try and make a little bit of money, but I was mainly living at home. I wasn't really sure where my music career was going. Previously, I think the summer of '07 I played with WMP on bass, and that was a lot of fun. I became really good friends with those guys. Two of those guys, I should say, that I played with later went on to form Impatient Nation with me. That would be a little bit later. But at that point, I'd end up leaving that band under good circumstances. I thought I had got an opportunity elsewhere, which I thought was going to be a good opportunity. It didn't really pan out. It was another band called Dragline, which I played for a few months for. It was just one of those things that just kind of fell apart. So like my music career, I wasn't really sure where I was going. Even in my personal life, it was just a strange time. So while I was in grad school at USF, I was looking for like an elective, and trying to get enough credits to get my master's degree in geography, which is what I was studying for. So I was looking for electives, and I found like, okay, here's USF has a big music school, so it's like, okay, they're accepting auditions for the chorus. There's like a mixed chorus, guys and girls. So I'm like, yeah, let me check this out. This shouldn't be too bad. I do a thing with the chorus for the semester, get a little bit of credit. Maybe learn a few things along the way. And while I'm there, I gotten to meet some of the people I was in the chorus with, and I got talking to this one kid, this guy named Robert. He and I were talking about music and bands, and he was from the area. He was from I think Eastlake or Tarpon Springs, somewhere up in which is about a couple of miles north of St. Petersburg in Florida. For those of you, I don't know if you're familiar with the area, you might be listening and be like, where the hell is Tarpon Springs? Well, that's where it is. But yeah, Robert was a really cool kid. I got to meet with him. He was a little bit younger than me, but like we had gotten to talk about bands, and not just like hard rock stuff, but he was also into like Prince and stuff like that, which I was like, okay, man, like there's not a lot of guys I meet with, who have a little bit of diverse interests like that. And I feel like he told me, he's like, hey, well, I'm trying to get this band going with my friends. We don't have a singer. I really like your voice. It's like, I'm not much of a singer myself, but I'm trying to, get into the music school. That's why I'm here. And he was a guitar player. So he invited me out to jam with his band for a couple weeks. And, he had this whole thing ready to go. It was Cobalt Blue. They had a bunch of songs written. They just needed someone to come in and sing. So, I mean, I was, even at 24, I was like already the old guy there because, a bunch of the guys were a little bit younger than me. I think the youngest guy was like still in high school at that point. So, but it was cool. Like, we had got to jam on a couple of cover songs and a few originals. We had written some stuff and we had kind of recorded a little EP. And at first there was a guy on bass who great guy. His name is Justin, but he didn't stick around for too much longer. And then Rob said, hey, well, how about there's this guy I know. His name is John. He's a really, really good bass player. I think, maybe he might want to like record our album and like help produce it. This guy's a really good bass player, and he's like, maybe he'll want to jam with us. And so I'm like, oh yeah, right on. Okay, I'll meet this guy. So we go over to John's house and we record like this EP in his garage, and it's not something I've ever put out. Honestly, it's the results of it are a little rough. I wasn't really happy with my voice at the time, and again, this is me just like kind of still doing this for kind of the first time. I'm still figuring out what to do, but like that's what you do when you're just starting out. And these guys were young too, so we were all in kind of a similar place. Even though I was a couple years older, I had a little bit of experience, but it's all part of a learning curve. But I met John there. He was doing the engineering, and he had recorded some of the bass tracks on there just because like we didn't have anyone to do them at the time. And he was like, it's like, yeah, man. It's like, dude, you have a really good voice. And we just got started talking about Rush and The Who and all this other bands, like old school bands that we were a fan of. And he told me that he played, in cover bands with his parents and this and that. And like, I was just blown away by the way this guy played bass. Not only was he great on bass, but he could also play guitar and drums, and he could sing and play keyboards. Like this guy could do it all on like every instrument and was amazing at it. So, but he and I bonded right away, and he was just a good dude. And neither of us ended up staying with the band that long. He ended up moving to Georgia to work at Atlanta International Airport because he was really excited about airplanes and aviation and mechanics. He wanted to be an airline mechanic, and he's been an airline mechanic at working for Delta Airlines in Atlanta for like the last 11 years now almost. But he's always still kept that love for music. Like he used to do a lot of YouTube videos where he would play these songs and he would record every instrument and every part and do like Iron Maiden and Dio stuff, and it was really impressive. So he and I have kept in touch over the years, but like haven't really gotten to see each other as much. But for years I've been hounding this guy like, dude, you got to come on my podcast. And it just for whatever reason it never happened. But I am so happy to have this guy on my show. He's one of the coolest guys I know. Please welcome Jon Campagna.
That's it. You got it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, after a setup like that, what can you say?
It's a long-winded way to get there, but like I figure if I'm going to tell the story, we got to start at the beginning. You know what I mean? And
yeah, that
is how we met. Because we had our mutual friend Robert. He was the guitar player in the band, and we had Taylor on drums. So we were a four-piece. And again, we're all just kids at this point, just kind of starting out. But it's kind of like anytime you go through like your awkward years when you're growing up, you look at a picture of yourself. It's like, oh man, I can't believe I wear that. I wore that, right? Or I said this. That's kind of the same way it can be with bands and music sometimes when you're starting out. But like you got to go through that to get to where you want to be. And for me, that band, even though I haven't talked about it as much, I look back at it now. I'm like, man, that was a really important step of me getting to where I've been on my career. And I know it was a good experience for you, especially because you and I got to meet and we just clicked right away.
So 100%. If you are honest about your art, you should always be looking forward.
Yeah.
And when you look back and if you cringe, that is 100% okay. And I really believe that because I've been recording stuff since I was 13, and I listen to stuff and I just go, oh God, what was I doing? Where was my headspace? I would never track something like that right now. I should have bought a better mic. I should have this and that. But man, it's pure. Like that form of art and that form of looking back is really pure. As long as you keep honest to yourself, I think, and that's where that goes. So, but I want to start back at the Genesis, and I say Genesis because I'm sure we're going to go there eventually, but we're going to start at the Genesis of us in Cobalt Blue.
Yeah.
And I'll give you my recollection of that time.
Yeah, what are some of your memories about that? I mean, I know you knew Robert. You were thinking like, all right, he's going to come in with his band and record stuff. So
yeah.
So what was sort of your experience of that?
Robert and I went to high school together, so we knew each other from there. And when did I meet him? Probably 16, 17 years old. And that's, how I knew him. And he went on to college, and, because of social media, which is a blessing and a curse, everybody gets to stay in touch together. And
yeah, I mean, social media, I mean, we were still doing MySpace and stuff at the time.
Yes,
so like it was there, but, it wasn't what it is now.
Absolutely. As an aside, I think it's a wonderful tool, and any tool can be used for good or bad.
Yeah, totally.
But so the way this happens, right, is Robert's like, hey man, I want to record an EP, and I've had my EMU 1820 box since I was 13 as well, and that was the thing I recorded through forever in my piece of crap PC with the side missing and the whole 9 yards. But I'm like, okay, man, sure, come on down. So I think I'm gonna say that's 2008, winter of 2008, right?
Yeah, that was around the time frame. Because I know we
so
played our first show. I know we played our first show in like January of 2009.
Yeah, that would absolutely make sense with the timeline. So you guys came in, and he brought like 4 or 5 songs that he wanted to do, and you guys tracked them, and I recorded them, and it was fine, it was cool. And Justin Tokarski was the bass player at the time. And
Justin Reed, I think that's
Reed.
That's what
I'm
his
sorry,
name was.
Justin Reed.
Well, there was another guy on guitar, Mike Pekarsky.
That's what it is. Sorry,
Yeah.
Memory's fuzzy. But so yeah, Justin did the bass parts, and we listened to them back, and he kind of knew that it wasn't really what needed to be there. And
yeah, I think Justin was a great guy too, but I think he was just
wonderful.
Yeah, he was just learning how to play. I think at this point, I think he was like really new to like playing, so it's just. Again, just not having the experience level, it wasn't quite, it wasn't quite where it needed to be as far as an EP. Like I think he just needed a little bit more time. Not knocking the guy whatsoever. It's just that was just where he was at that point.
Still friends to this day, so wonderful dude. But of course, we were mixing and mastering this thing in my bedroom, and in my bedroom just kind of like now is my guitar. So I'm like, no, Robert, let's kind of see what this sounds like, and I think it was on what was the first song on the EP, man? Shoot 'Em Up. I just did Shoot 'Em Up, and I did my thing, but then I put a bass solo at the end because obviously I'm Jon Campagna. It's got to have a damn bass solo. And Robert's like, ballsy, oh man, this is great.
It's a lost art, the bass solo.
Well, man, I'm 22 years old, and I want to play every note that I know at 6 million miles an hour. And, even I can tell you, just in the time that elapsed until now, my playing is wildly different. Now, I could still do that thing, but I kind of choose, I pick and choose those spots instead of like every 4th bar.
Shit, man, I'm 37. I still can't play like that, so I don't know what that says.
I mean, thanks. I digress. But that's kind of where this started, man, because then I tracked the bass, and I really liked what I heard. And everybody's their own worst critic, Jack. I actually always really liked your voice. I liked the way that you sang. It sounded good to me. It was pleasing, and your delivery was good, and you
always had so many nice things to say to me about my voice, and up until that, I hadn't heard a lot of positive reviews up to that point. I just, maybe I was just in my own head at that point, but you kind of helped give me the confidence to really go for it. So I'm always appreciative for that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Everybody's freaking Simon Cowell, right?
Yeah.
Everybody thinks they can spot a good singer, and maybe you can, but I hear the good things in performances and people, and I try to cultivate that. And not that I'm some super producer or anything, but I just liked the way you sang. I thought it was fine.
I think it's like anything else, and I tend to be a little hard on myself from back then, just because like. I knew that I could sing. I knew that I had the ability to do it. It's just the technique and the experience wasn't quite there yet. And over the years I've tried to get better. I've taken lessons, and I've tried to be more mindful of just all the physicality that comes with it. It's so much different than playing bass or guitar, but I've just tried to approach it that way. So hopefully, I'd like to think that I've gotten better over the years. But yeah, I mean, but that again, everyone has to have a starting point where they jump off and take the chance, and that's kind of what that whole period was for me. So I'm always grateful.
These things are pivotal in your life.
Yeah.
As short-lived as that time was, it's a learning experience, and it can be a jumping-off point for other things that you may not have done, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoyed the whole process. I enjoyed the mixing and the recording of it, and then the re-recording, because, we did the first one, and we're like, well, maybe we should, do this with all of us again and make a better one.
Mm-hmm.
So we did, and there's a second EP, and I do still have all these recordings, in case you're
I'll bet.
So,
I'll bet you do.
I break them out from time to time, and I listen, and it's fun to listen to.
That's cool, man.
It was a time of your life, man.
Yeah.
Those old recordings.
It was a snapshot of where we were,
Yeah, 100%. Like, when I started out by saying that I cringe, I also appreciate the naivety in a way. Because it's honest. At least the way I play, man, it's honest. It comes from me purely. I try not to be pretentious.
At that age, everyone's very ambitious.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
And we all thought we were the best god rock musicians on the
planet.
Of course.
Yeah.
Present company included.
You have to have a little bit of that weird ego in order to think that I could do it. I mean, not be conceited about it, but just that belief in yourself.
Well, as Neil would say from Rush, it can be a very alienating experience as a human, to be thrust into that limelight and under that microscope and under that pressure. And I played since I was a little kid, so I feel right at home on a stage. Yeah. My wife looks at me and goes, I don't know how you do this. And I'm like, well, I'm just a social butterfly because I'm used to performing. Performing is natural. But I understand that a lot of people have trouble with that. And Neil did his whole life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, he was naturally just a reserved guy. He didn't do meet and greets for the longest time just because he was uncomfortable because everyone was looking at him like he's the second coming of Jesus, on drums, which deservedly so. He was one of the greatest of all time, if not the. But I kind of get it from where he's it's hard to really have a genuine moment with people if they're telling you how great you are all the time, and that seems like a great problem to have. But still, that's got to be. I'm sure that must have made him uncomfortable. Look, I'm just a guy.
I can actually speak from experience on that because I was, I started playing in my parents' band when I was 13 years old in bars. Yeah. And being a 13-year-old kid drummer, you get every drunk in the world comes up, you're the best drummer ever. I'm like, well, thanks. No, I'm not, but, thanks.
It's you're just saying that because I'm a kid, but yeah. I
later on, even as an adult, look, I can play the bass pretty damn good.
You can,
right?
Yeah.
I know I can.
That's not you being cocky or bragging. It's just the truth. You know what you're capable of doing.
Even I have had a really hard time with that kind of adoration that comes with that kind of playing and that kind of level of virtuosity, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Because even as a teenager and as a kid, you think everybody would love to be told you're the greatest bass player I've ever heard. I'm like. Thanks, man. My response was always sincere. It was always hey, thanks, brother. I appreciate that. In my heart, there was always that kind of twinge, it's the imposter syndrome, Jack.
You also got to walk that line, though. And I think, we learn this as we're young, but it's if you dismiss compliments too often, that can be rude as well. I've met guys and I was like, hey, man, you did a really good job. And he'd be like, I'll talk to this one guy and he'll be like, oh, no, I sucked. And I was like,
that's bad too. I agree. That's bad too because you don't want to dismiss that praise.
Yeah, it's right? All right, jackass. I was trying to say something nice to you, but now I don't even want to talk to you because you're I get it. You're insecure, but you don't have to be a jerk about it.
People are funny, man.
Yeah.
Because in the time that we were in Cobalt Blue and then we did that, I was also running sound at Bourbon Street.
You were, yeah.
And I ran sound for some national acts, and I saw a lot of different artists and a lot of different ways
Sure.
people would have to psych themselves up to get ready for gigs. Some guys have to take a shot. Some guys have to chug a beer. Some guys puke before they play, and then when they puke, everything is great. And there's all these facets, these mental facets of performance that I think people don't really know.
Yeah, well, musicians, generally speaking, like 99% of them are just weird people.
Oh, yes, we are.
Ourselves included.
I fit that mold, but
yeah.
I've been told
performers
way
in
worse.
general,
I think you kind of have to be, but
on some level.
One of the most enjoyable things I've really done in my life. It's been a big part of my life, and it was really special time to share that with you guys in Cobalt Blue.
For sure, man. And I don't know about you, but like this is a way I've always felt about being on stage. It's like people are like, how can you do that? How can you be like that on stage? And I tell them honestly, it's one of the few places in my life where I not only feel uninhibited, but I feel like I'm in control of my situation. And by that, I mean I can be the version of myself that I want to be, or at least I have the opportunity to do that and to control and to express myself, in a way that I don't act like that in, just talking. Like I'm a pretty normal guy. I'm kind of an average looking dude. I don't really, give off that vibe to people. At least I don't think I do. But like when I'm on stage, I want to just crush it and just give everything I've got and, be like the guys that I grew up idolizing. Yeah. And that's my goal to it.
I'm kind of glad you brought up that point, because I'm going to kind of drive on this line a little bit. So growing up and some of the things that we talked about, some of the bands, like one of the biggest influences on me was The Who. And it was in a very formative time in my life. Like I was 14 years old. I just picked up a bass guitar and I saw John Entwistle, right? Mm-hmm. But then I saw Pete Townsend and just that ferocity, that fierce energy that came off of him when he was on stage. And I was just like, wow, what is that? So I find myself even to this day, like, I know that when I play on stage, I'm kind of imposing. Like I've played with some guitar players that they don't know what to do, because like, I'll get right in your face and kind of like, stand on the stage and get big and do all the stupid Steve Harris stuff. And a lot of guys, they can't handle that, man. They just want a bass player to stand back there and do this and look like they're bored to death.
I guess I think that turns off some people sometimes. And people get weird like that. It's this weird like kind of dance you have to go through. And like I was just doing a podcast, and I haven't released it yet, but I'm doing like a movie review podcast for the School of Rock. Look at Jack Black's character in there at the beginning of it. He's all over the place, and to the point of pissing off the rest of his band.
Yes.
Because he's Jack Black being Jack Black, doing his thing. But it's like you have to kind of walk that line sometimes. And there have been times where I've been on stage with bands or where like I've been getting into it, I've been on bass, and they were like, Jack, why don't you dial it back a little bit, bro? We're not. And like I get it, because I've been on the other side of that as well, especially if someone is just completely acting a fool on stage and just you get that, it's like you walk that line between being a great performer and just being like a parody of yourself, and you don't want to get that way. And not saying that you've gotten to that way, but like some people could look at it that way. You know what I mean?
Of course. And like I keep saying, you have to be honest with yourself, and you have to kind of critique your own crap. You got to say like, well, was that too much? Was it too little? Yeah. But it like you said,
and it's so nerve-wracking. I hate hearing my own voice, which is weird to say for a guy doing his own podcast and editing, but I've gotten better about it over the years. But like I am my own worst critic, like you said.
You get used to it. That's the only thing I can tell you is eventually you just get used to it. Because if you're going to do this kind of work and you're going to record and listen, you just got to get used to hearing yourself.
And you have to be willing to give yourself some grace too.
Yeah.
If you be like, okay, look, I'm just being in my head. No, that was a good take. I'm keeping that.
You can drive yourself insane.
You really can.
Trying to achieve perfection.
That's why for me, like I love working with a good producer, having an extra set of ears in there, someone to just kind of bounce ideas off of, who's not necessarily in the band, but someone whose opinion you can trust, and who can be that sounding board. Be like, hey, maybe this take's not quite there. Why don't you try that again? Or why don't we try this? Not
that's
someone
what
who's
was fun to go back.
not someone
to
who's going to
Cobalt.
say you suck. That's not constructive.
No, I mean that's
There's
not
a difference between that and like constructive criticism and like genuine feedback.
100%. And so I'm glad that you went there in this topic because the thing that I enjoyed about the Cobalt sessions was that I got to be producer because I'm so used to playing and recording my own crap. I sometimes really enjoy sitting on this side of the keyboard. I've done some recordings.
Was that the first time you had done that with like another person's band?
Man, I would have to say it's one of the first.
Okay.
Yeah. If not the, I'd say one of.
Right on.
Yep. And I just did some recently where my buddy had to do some tracks for somebody else, and I really enjoyed being a producer. Like, hey man, let's try this fill in this place, or let's try this kind of thing. And I don't know, that's really exciting to me. I guess I'm crazy.
No, I get that.
But that's what was cool about the Cobalt experience, and I think that's what led us into doing the group, because I knew we were going to do that a little more, and we were going to record stuff, and we went on to play some gigs that maybe we should mention and talk about, because I want to relive those too.
I'll tell you, man. And it's weird that I haven't brought this up before, but like one of the coolest shows that I've ever done was the first thing that we did together. It was at your high school, East Lake High School in Tarpon Springs. I think our drummer at the time, Taylor, he was a young guy. I think he was a senior or maybe a junior at that point. He was young. He was a kid. But like, he had gotten, like they were doing like a battle of the bands, like a talent show type of thing. And it was going to be in the school auditorium. Yeah, and that was a big room too. It's like I never played a room.
It's a 1,000-seat hall.
Yeah, I had never played a room that big before, at least not being in a band. So it was cool. There were a couple other bands there. I forget what the other bands' names were, but there was this there was this really good like progressive like band that was there.
Oh, Right Split.
Ride Split? Was that the name?
Right Split. The kids from Right Split. Yeah.
Why doesn't that name ring a bell?
Well, okay, so they were
calling themselves
something else.
They must have been called something else at the time.
From the Embrace or something.
Yes.
They had some kind of metal name. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like From the Embrace or something like that. From the Embrace,
yeah.
Really good band. But,
also good friends of mine. Very, very good.
I think they were originally they were going to frame it as like a Battle of the Bands competition, but I think there were a bunch of other bands that dropped out.
Yeah.
And so they just like, we're just going to have a show. And it was great, like, because you had a lot of the kids from the school there and a lot of like, friends of the band. And it was like these young kids and the teacher, Mr. Knable, right? Yeah, Mr. Rob Knable. I ended up meeting him. He was a cool guy. Yeah, a really nice guy. He was the teacher there. He was like the music teacher, and he kind of ran the whole thing. And I remember him getting up on stage. He's like, "All right, I know everyone's here. This is probably the opposite of what I tell you, but this is a rock show. I want you guys to be loud. I want you guys to and just said." I'm paraphrasing a a bit, but it was like right on, dude.
Can I tell you why he got up there and said that, man?
Mm-hmm.
I have some great musical history at that school because I'm just insane, right? So, the reason we did all of these shows the way that we did it was because, I ran sound and we had a band and I was like, all right, Mr. K, here's how we're going to do this. We're going to go out and we're going to rent a 5,000 watt PA to cover this hall, and the school's going to pay for it, and we did. And I brought 8 18s and 6 15s and monitors.
This was like while you were a student there?
Oh, yeah, man. Oh, yeah. We did this 2-3 times a year.
That's crazy. I mean, I can imagine it was like, okay, listen, child. Like, why are you telling me what to buy? But yeah, I mean, he listened.
These poor kids' ears. Oh, my God.
You don't have the budget here, John.
But the one show that we did, Jack.
That's killer, though.
Man, I wish that we had video of this, but you just have to take my word for it from people that were there.
That's a cool teacher, though.
That time that we brought the 8 18s,
mm-hmm.
I kid you not, it was so loud. I was shaking the loose paint off of the ceiling. It was snowing in that auditorium from the kick drum, from the thump, and you could see like the first 5 rows of teenagers just doing this every time the pressure wave.
Just pulsating.
I was trying to live my rock dreams, man. I was pretending
man.
I was the Who playing at Carnegie Hall, right?
Yeah, you might as well have been at the Garden at that point.
50 high school kids, but man, it was fun. And that guy just let us have carte blanche. He trusted me. He knew I knew what I was doing. He's like, okay, John, just do what you got to do. So that's why he would get up there and say, this is a rock show and it's going to be loud. So here's Cobalt Blue. And oh, man. That's fun.
So and it was cool, and just like seeing the reaction that the kids were into it. I wasn't sure what to expect there, but like I had
kids
a few.
Were always into that. That was the thing, man. It was really cool.
I know, and that's the thing, man. You never know, especially with our generation, because like we definitely grew up in the time where everyone's into hip hop and everything else, and just not real. Rock music for most of our lives hasn't been the mainstream thing. Like we've never been the prettiest girl at the dance, but it's always been there, and there's always been a contingent of people who liked it, and either that or maybe kids who might not have been exposed to it. Like once they hear it, they're like, oh, this is pretty cool. But yeah, I mean the reception that we got, and just
it was very warm.
It was, and the kids were into it. And I remember, like, at the end, like, we ended up jamming with some of the From the Embrace guys. We did the Trooper and
I was thinking
Smoke
about
on the Water and a couple other stuff. And just like I went up and sang the Trooper. I didn't even know all the words, but I just kind of went through it, and just like these kids had like jaw dropping on their like.
I'd never drummed that in my life.
Yeah, and they were like recording it with their phones, like, holy shit, this guy's singing like Bruce Dickinson. It's crazy. So it was vindication for me, especially for like all the years that I'd been on it so far, and nothing that was working out. And I remember we all went out to dinner with a bunch of their buddies, and it was just, we were off to the races at that point. So that's one of those shows that always hold a special place in my heart.
And I had the Sun rig of death, I had the 415s and 810s and 4 heads, of course, because I was nuts.
Yeah, man, you always had like the greatest like bass setup. It was like Mount Basemore over there.
Well, that's what happens when you grow up listening to John Entwistle, man.
Pretty much, dude. And you were always very savvy about gear and tech stuff like that, which was always really cool.
Super nerd.
Yeah, man. And we played a few club shows after that, but you ended up moving away, and I ended up kind of doing my own thing after that. And then later later that year I started Impatient Nation, and I had a good 3-year run with that band as well. So. Yeah, but like I said, man, it's like it's certainly where I got my start as a front man. So it's it was a lot of good times. Just getting in there, getting in the room, jamming on stuff, figuring stuff out, writing together, and yeah, man.
So I think we did 2 more shows, right? We did Gasoline Alley, and then we did one other.
We did the Pegasus Lounge at one point.
I don't remember.
Like the old Pegasus Lounge.
Oh, that's the one.
Yeah, we did that, and we did Gasoline Alley maybe once or twice. I'm not sure.
Gas Alley gig. So that's the other one that stands out in my head, because I actually really enjoyed that one. Yeah,
and that was a lot of fun, and playing there, and that allowed me, for when I was doing Impatient Nation a couple months later, that helped, having the recognition from the people there, like helped get me booked in that place. Cause like
I'm glad to hear that.
Because like one of the door guys, Mark, was a really good guitar player in another band as well. He was like, dude, you've got an awesome voice. I'm like, oh, right on. Well, I've got this new thing going, and he helped me get booked there, and then we were off. And that was a really fun room to play.
I feel like Gas Alley was the more polished of the shows, because, I think maybe the nerves, man, I tell you, every time I played in East Lake, and I played it recently as an adult, even in 2016. Yeah. And there's just something about being there, that high school me, I that's the only place I get the nerves. And
sure.
So
you got the personal history there.
It was fun going to Gas Alley, and we played that gig really well. And that was also the one we did the 6-minute Diatopolis Androsity instrumental that we wrote in like.
Is that what we did?
7, 8. Yes, we did that at the end. I
remember that.
That was pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
I have fond memories of Gas Alley. I've actually played in Gas Alley a few times other than with us, so
that was a great club, man. It's a shame that they ended up. I think they're under new management. They've been under new management for a while. It's just they had a tough time. I think just the way that the place they were located. If they were located in like downtown St. Pete or Clearwater, they'd probably be still open today. Well, I mean, COVID.
It was good till they built the frontage road. And then when they built the frontage off of that, it was kind of the kiss of death for them, because then it wasn't very easy for people to get to it anymore, I don't think. And it closed, and then I think it reopened again at some point, and then closed again.
Yeah, I mean it's a tough thing when like you're banking on original music and trying to have that be your source of income for that. I mean they had the bar and the restaurant as well, so it wasn't totally on that. But yeah, that was just one of those venues that I really liked. But I was always just scratching my head. I'm like, how could they not have kept that going? But it was what it was. But we had a lot of good times there.
Yeah, no doubt. So the Pegasus Lounge, that was the one in Tampa, right? I think.
Yeah, that was this, and they've since actually moved. From what I understand, they've moved to like a bigger building because the building they were at was not
tiny.
Good.
Oh yeah, it was tiny.
And I say that with all due respect. I'm very grateful for all the shows that I played there. Don't get me wrong, but that was a hole.
And we played the Nobody. And so the prior two shows we actually had an audience and a pretty good one at that. And then the Pegasus was we're a band in Tampa show and we're gonna play the Nobody. So
And I remember you were pissed about it. I'm like, welcome to the business, kid. That's how it works.
No doubt about that, man.
But
if I had $1 for every time I played to one toothless drunk in a bar, I'd be a very rich man. But,
yeah. Like they don't cover our bar tab. I'm like, bro, this is a different scene than the cover circuit.
And you got that right.
Yeah. But hey, that's how you learn. So, but from what I understand, they're in like a nice new building now. I haven't been there yet, but
that's really good.
Pre-COVID, of course.
Sure.
But yeah, man. So I know later that spring you ended up moving to Atlanta, and that was something you wanted to do
this was this was a really transitional time in my life too, and
of course,
definitely yours, because 2008 and into 2009, that's the time that my dad passed away. Was 2009 in November.
Right.
And,
of course, rest in peace. I remember a couple times jamming with you and your dad, and
that's right.
And your other buddy, Jeff, who's no longer with us. But I had the pleasure of jamming with you guys a couple times, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I see those pictures every once in a while, and I give it a smile. That was cool when you came up and did that.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, and Jeff was I was really glad that I got the opportunity to meet him.
Man, those two guys, boy, what a loss to just not only our family but just the music scene in that area. Because
absolutely,
my dad was just positivity, man. He had good things to say about everybody and to everybody. Was very encouraging, and I learned a lot about that from him, of course.
Absolutely.
Tried to do that myself. And Jeff was the funniest guy I've ever met. And for a big guy, he had the fastest doubles I've ever seen in his hands. And I was just like, oh, yes. When he came in the audition for our band, I was like, we need that guy.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a great time, too. But it was really cool to share that with you as well. And then we did that a lot. In our band, we let people sit in all the time. Some bands are really funny and never let people do that. We let anybody. We didn't care how drunk. Just come up. What's it? One song?
That's
5 minutes of somebody's life. Like, it'll be over soon.
That's cool, man. And that's a risky move to do because you never know what you're going to get into. But that's cool of you that you guys were able to do that.
We never took
in the cover band.
That seriously. I mean, I don't know. Maybe my mom did, but like the rest of the band were just like, come on, man.
Well, it's just, I mean, I understand that because you never know what you're going to get if someone's been drinking a little bit.
You never know what you're going to get. Sometimes it was really brilliant. And other times you're like, wow.
Yeah, this is the shit.
But you let the wow happen. And
man, that's part of the fun of it.
You might have made somebody's life experience. You'd
exactly,
never know, man.
Yeah.
You never know.
That's cool.
I've had people come tell me later in life, like back from the Battle of the Bands days, right? When we were 15, 16 years old. My buddy is married to a girl that was in that show, and I was running the sound, and I did something. I did some technical thing. She was having problems, and she was having a really bad time. I didn't know any of this.
Yeah.
And, I ended up fixing the plug on the guitar, and she told me, and she told me across the table and started crying because she was so relieved that I had helped her in that moment. And that's why I say you have no idea what what effect it might have on people. And that's why we always let people sit in, man.
That's awesome, dude.
It's just a moment in time, and then it's going to be gone.
Being able to kind of grow up in that environment is a really unique thing, and I think it's a good way of cutting your teeth. And I know another thing that you and I always had in common because you grew up in Buffalo, New York.
Yep.
And I grew up, in Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia. And like we both moved to Florida in our teen years, or basically when we were young. So it's like having that experience as like a transplant kid,
Oh, yeah, man.
that's a whole unique thing, because it's like you feel like it's like you feel like you belong to these two different places, but at the same time you don't really belong to anywhere. And it's a unique way to grow up for sure.
I think for me, Jack, coming to Florida, in a lot of ways, I was that geeky, nerdy kid, and I still am in my heart. But when I got to Florida, it allowed me to invent the persona that I wanted to be. I wasn't just little Johnny anymore. I was Jonathan, and I was the Bronco Who guy that played guitar. I wasn't just that little nerdy kid that was annoying.
Yeah, I mean, and I think almost everyone goes through that when they go into their teen years. But like, especially if you like move to a different place, it's like I kind of felt the same way. It's like, all right, now I can kind of be my own person. And like my older sister had already gone off to college, so it's like, all right, like I don't, I can kind of control my narrative at this point. Not that it was being controlled before, but like you get that feeling when you're a kid. And it's
I kind of think in a lot of ways
you get that chance. Almost like a way to start over. Which is nice.
I was ready for that, man. That was life altering in a lot of ways too. But you have that duality of personality, and I don't know about you, but when I go home to Buffalo now as an adult, I still feel that duality, because I walk back in there, and there's a lot of things that are familiar, but it's also very alien and foreign in a lot of ways, because you have that nostalgia, and things look certain ways that they used to, and other things are absolutely foreign. And that's an interesting kind of dichotomy.
No doubt.
But I do love to go back. I don't know if you've been back home to Philly at all, but
yeah, I mean, not for the last couple of years, but like I try to go when I can, and I still have a lot of family and friends up there, so it's I really want to go like once it's kind of okay, to travel a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, it's been a little bit tougher, especially now that I have kids, to kind of schedule it. But I mean, I definitely, I definitely still very much feel it at home there, even though I haven't lived there for over 20 years now, full time. But it's still, it's still very much in my heart, and I've gotten to sort of explore upstate New York as well, because my sister lives in Rochester.
Oh, yeah.
So great. I mean, not that I know Buffalo as much, but like I've been.
That's the same kind of thing, man. It's just a little.
But like
east.
I've kind of fallen in love with that part of the country as well.
Same vibe.
I go up there to see my sister and my brother-in-law and my nieces and nephews. So it's that's a cool that's a cool thing to experience as well. But like I know what you mean. Like there's always going to be that part of me that like identifies with that area.
But a lot of us Floridians have that story, man. There's a lot of transplants down there, and I think a lot of ways that brought a lot of us together too, because you try to find something that's kind of comfortable in that commonality with other people. Like, oh, you're from up north too. Oh, okay, cool. And then you kind of form those kind of social groups, and then it branches out from there, right? And in a lot of ways, we were outcasts because the native Floridians are like, oh, them damn Yankees from up there, and I had a lot of that too.
Maybe.
So.
I didn't get too much of that, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure it was there.
It's maybe it's a little subliminal, but
maybe I don't know, but
definitely there.
I mean that's the deal with Florida. Everyone's like, oh man, you guys are crazy in Florida. I'm like, yeah, well, we just have a lot of people from all over the place. Everyone wants to come here. So by law of averages, you're going to get some wackadoos. So.
Yeah, in fact, I know way less native Floridians than I did transplants. It was always wow, you were actually born here? No way.
Yeah. But I mean, it's definitely a contrast, with my wife who was born in Orlando and grew up in Tampa. So it's like she has a completely different perspective of like, we were like, when we were dating, she was just like, oh, I can never live up in that cold weather. I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm here to stay then.
Yeah. I mean, we did, I'm not particularly looking forward to doing that again ever if I don't have to. Atlanta is as cold as I really want to get, to be frank. But I do go back to Buffalo in the wintertime. It's beautiful, but I like to be able to leave
Yeah,
You know?
and it's nice to have those options for sure.
Yeah, the 9 months of winter is it's pretty brutal, man. It
For
can
sure,
be.
man. But things are going well for you at Delta. You've been there for a while. You're there with your beautiful wife Rebecca, who I know that you grew up with her as well.
And that's pretty crazy too, man. We met in high school. I was 16, she was 15, and we dated for a lot of years, and then we kind of split up and did our own things, and then rekindled, and now we're back together and married.
That's rad,
so
man. Like that's super cool. Like
it's a pretty crazy story. It's remarkable in a lot of ways.
yeah. Well, because I know when I met you, you guys had split up and you
It
worked
was
together.
just right then. Yeah.
And it was still
So,
fresh. It was rough.
you
And
betcha.
I remember when you told me like, yeah, man, me and Rebecca are seeing each other again. And I'm like, you know what? That's awesome. Like I'm not judging for that because it's like you got to go. Sometimes you got to go through those things in life, and it's obviously worked out. You guys are doing great, and that's part of growing up.
It just kind of happened, Jack. It wasn't like I didn't write that narrative because we were apart for like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
But I kind of stayed in touch, and I told my wife the other day, and she didn't really know this, but so when we broke up in high school,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say 1 month went by until her dad called me on the phone and said, "Hey, do you want to go fishing?" And it was on my birthday. And I was feeling really low because, obviously didn't have my girlfriend. And, I was like, what the hell? And I see Joe Ritzberg on the phone. And I'm like, no way. He's like,
that must have been awkward.
It was really awkward. So I told my wife, I said, I dated your dad unbeknownst to you for a few years there. We were keeping it clandestine.
But you guys became fishing buddies during that time.
Man, we were like this to begin with. So
no kidding.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, and he was a huge influence on my life.
That's awesome, man.
We had a friendship, even though I wasn't dating his daughter anymore. I was like, yeah, let's go get some French fries and a burger and take the John boat out. And
that's cool, man. I imagine most dads would have been like, get lost, but not this guy.
I was just close with her dad and her mom too, and her mom is amazing, still is, and that's how that dynamic worked, man. I don't have in-law problems. I know a lot of people have in-law problems. I really don't.
Yeah, man. Me too, man. I've lucked out when it comes to that. My wife's parents are really, really cool.
So that's the state of the union here in my life. As you can see, we're in the J Camp Studios, which I.
Yeah. So what's going on with you now musically, man? Have you been doing anything since? COVID being what it was, no one's really. People are gigging a little bit down here in Florida, but like not much. It's not what it used to be, but.
Working in aviation, man, weird schedules. You work holidays, weekends, nights, odd shifts. It just makes it almost next to impossible to be in any kind of gigging band that plays on the weekends.
Yeah.
So I try to gig whenever I can. Now, I've met some fantastic musicians here that I play with and jam with, and that's his drum set back there.
Nice.
And I've been really just lucky to find these guys. And I did play a gig with a band, and unfortunately the guitarist passed away shortly after that. And he was an amazing dude, and I was really disappointed because I hadn't played drums in years, man. And he got me to play drums in his band, and it was super cool. But I did film that gig, and I've got 2 hours of film from that. That's just a wonderful time capsule.
That's awesome, dude. And you'll always have that and see your buddy up there, and
Yeah, absolutely.
That's rad.
As far as my music goes, I feel lucky in a sense that I get to do it and engage in it in the way that I want to do it now. Because when I played in my parents' band, for like 10 years, that was a formative time in my life.
Mm-hmm.
It was worth it. I wouldn't change it, but I gave up a ton of things to do that, man. There were so many weekends and things that I didn't get to do with my wife when I was dating her at that time because I had to play the gig. And that grind became really kind of bad towards the end, and I had to get out.
Mm-hmm.
And so since then, I kind of do it at the arm's length that I want to do it at, and now I get to do it in a way that is good for me. My heart can be in this, and I can do it purely without the pressure of we got to make money. We got to keep gigs. We got to kiss this bar owner's butt because we might not get a gig back. And look, man, I understand all of that is necessary. I'm not knocking that. I know you have to play those games. People in bands, do not get me wrong. Yeah. I've just, I don't want to be part of that anymore. It sucked the fun right out of playing for me, man.
Gotcha.
And that's why I make YouTube videos now, because I can slave in my studio and I can make things and I can just do whatever the hell I want. And it allows me to just enjoy music.
You ever work on some original stuff every now and then?
You know, I would love the opportunity to do it. I'm as good as an orator that I think I am. I just cannot put pen to paper. I couldn't write lyrics to save my life, and I don't know why.
That's okay. I mean, if only you knew somebody who specializes in that.
I do, and that's why I really liked what you wrote, man, for that song that we did, and I thought that was really cool, and still to this day. So I think I'm a more reactive musician, Jack.
Do you like? I mean, even in terms of like writing the music side of it, as opposed to like the words.
Oh, absolutely. I got riffs and stuff I've put down on tape, and you know, you want me to play something, I'll play it. I can come up with something that would sound cool.
Well, that's cool.
Because I always noodle, and I still pick my stuff up and play. You know, I haven't, well, I don't know if I can still play like I did when I was 16, but, you know, my hands are now 33 years old. And, you know, some things are a little harder to do. But
you know.
work around it, right?
Yeah.
But it's still just it's so much damn fun. I come in here and I hit record.
And this is something you'll always be able to do.
Yeah.
You know, you know, no matter how old you get, you know, it's something that, like, you know, not everyone can play, you know, football or baseball or basketball when they get older.
No doubt. Boy, let me tell you, starting to play hockey again at 32 years old.
That's right. Yeah, you've been playing hockey
16 years?
Yeah.
Oh, I tell you, man, these 16-year-old kids make me look stupid in goal. Oh, yeah, man. But I love every minute of it.
That's fun, too. That's awesome. Man, I always wish I played hockey growing up, because I always liked the sport, but I never played it when I was younger. And by the time I was into it, I was already a little. I thought I was already a little too old. I kind of missed the window, but you know.
You know, every kid in Buffalo thought that they were Dominic Hasek, right?
Yeah.
We all were flopping around. Yeah, we were all flopping around the street.
I mean, granted, I was a Flyers fan growing up, but I won't hold that against anyone.
Oh, good old Broad Street bullies, bud.
Yeah, man. Legion of Doom.
But you know, I had that back problem and back surgery that was just had it done in 2007, and I didn't think I could ever do that stuff again.
And it's tough when you're a young guy getting
terrifying
back stuff. Yeah.
Right? So I'm like, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. And I looked at my wife last year and I said, you know, honey, my back feels terrible. I feel terrible because I haven't been physically doing anything in my life. And, you know, muscles are just atrophying. And I had it all backwards. I thought that playing hockey would ruin me. And in the year and a half that I've been doing this, my back doesn't hurt as much. My knees don't hurt. I'm an idiot for letting all that time go by, honestly.
Yeah, but you know,
it's been great. It's been worth it.
But you know what, man? Like, you know, that stuff. That's how you had to go to get to where you are now. And now that you recognize it, and I mean, you look great, man. Like, you know, you've dropped a bunch of pounds over the years.
Yeah,
I've tried.
35 pounds.
I've also gained a few back. So, but that's a whole other thing. But
well, when I stepped into the pipes, man, then I realized that I was slow, and you can't be. Look, for lack of a better phrase, you can't be fat and be a goalie. You got to be fast. You need twitch reflexes.
Right.
You know, all that weight on your knees and stuff, it's just bad. So I said, all right, I'm going to have to lose weight. So
yeah, man, there's some goalies who are like super flexible and stuff like that, which is
guys are tiny,
deceptively flexible.
Twigs, you know.
Yeah, man.
You look at hockey players; they're all lean muscle.
No doubt.
I don't think I'm ever going to be that because I like pasta too much, and I'm way too Italian for that.
Amen. Ditto on that, bro.
But man, it was really important, and I didn't know how important it was to not only have things for the mind, but to have things for the body too. I was lacking that component of the body health in my life that I didn't know that I needed, and the camaraderie that comes from team sports too. You know, I was always kind of like, oh, you know, sports. I'm an intellectual. Sports. I'm a freaking idiot, dude. Like, there's so many things in my life that I've gone, man, I'm such an idiot. Why did I held such a hardline position on those things for so long? You know,
Stuff happens, man. Like that again, that's part of growing up. You know, you learn, you evolve, and all this sorts of thing. And to your credit, like you never like really gotten as long as I knew you, you were never into like a lot of trouble and stuff. And you know, even though you probably missed out on a few weekends when you were a kid playing in your parents' band, that stuff probably kept you out of trouble as well. Because kids need stuff like that to keep them busy.
No doubt. I mean, I've always kind of been the good kid. Like I've never even smoked weed, dude. And for a musician to say that,
I know.
I
know.
have not, people. Like,
yeah.
You can call me a liar if you want, but it is what it is. But
yeah, I mean, neither have I, and I'm not bashing anyone who has. Like, I'm not judging or anything. It's just not my deal.
It's just not my deal. I don't really drink. Like,
right.
If I have people over and they bring a beer, I might have one, and that case of beer will sit in my fridge for 8 months.
Right.
I won't touch it. Like, it's just, I've never been kind of into that stuff. No. I never really got it, and I sure as hell didn't like when that happened on the gigs. And that was the thing for me.
When guys would show up and they'd be, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a pet peeve of mine as well. I mean, it happens with some cats, but like, you can't do that.
It was happening in our time there, and it was really unfortunate.
Really?
Yeah.
Gotcha. I mean, I wasn't even privy to all that, but I'm not, you know.
I was only made privy later when I
can't say
people were coming late to practices and not coming at all. And
based on some of the stories that you told me, that doesn't surprise me. Now, we're not going to name any names, so you know, we both know who it is. So, but yeah, man, this has been such a cool walk down memory lane, man.
Heck
just getting to talk to you, and I feel like we should do this a lot more.
Yeah, me too, man.
You know, it's funny. I in addition to this, you know, the one-on-one stuff, I've done movies and wrestling. Well, I used to do some wrestling stuff on here as well, but like I haven't done it as much. I mean, I still watch it, but like, I don't know. I haven't really had the desire to like, you know, really review what's going on right now, just because, you know, not that I don't like what I see, but it's just like wrestling fans are weird.
You mean like Rush fans?
Yeah, like it's one of the weirdest freaking fandoms out there, man. People get so, it just got to the point where it's like buddies of mine who were into wrestling, like all they did was just complain about what they saw on that, and it's just like, at a certain point for me, I'm like, you know what, this isn't really fun for me to talk about anymore, so I'm not really going to deal with it. But that being said, sometimes, like, you know, I've taken a look at like old pay-per-views and like stuff on there. Like I recently did one for like Survivor Series of 1990. And I think I sent that to you.
Yeah.
With like my buddies Brian and Corey, and that was a lot of fun because like we didn't have, you know, we could look at something that happened from a completely different perspective, and it's such a fresh thing, and it wasn't looking at the same guys that we see on TV every week. So that was cool, and that seemed to come from a much more positive place.
If my wife watches this, which I'm sure I'll probably force her to, she'll probably get mad at me for pointing this out. But the one thing that she's done is like TV tropes. I didn't know what TV tropes was at all until my wife showed me.
Oh yeah.
The problem that I have with that, and I think like, and she knows that she does this, but like she will dissect everything, every form of meaning, like a movie or a show. Mm-hmm. She'll be looking at the tropes, and all of these things are directing you on how to feel about a certain thing. Like the Terminator series, for instance. We love all the Terminator movies. Well, I do. Mm-hmm. My wife only thinks that like the pure ones are like T1 and T2 and that everything else is trash. And, you know, I've never let anybody's opinion of something ruin it for me. I allow myself to experience it.
Right.
And formulate my response. You know, because it's so easy to look at tropes and go, this is terrible because of this plot device is stupid and there's a giant plot hole in this and this and that. I'm like, can't you just take the ride? Can't you let
I
move
agree.
You?
I mean, that's kind of the way I approach it with like Star Wars stuff. And I love everything when it comes to Star Wars. Like but like people get really weird when it comes to that franchise. And I think it's because
man.
And I think in that particular, because they expect to feel the same way that they did when they were 10 years old and seen it for the first time. And it's just like,
Nostalgia's a hell of a drug.
and it's just like, dude, you can't always look at it from that same perspective. You gotta be realistic about your expectations for certain things. Now, I mean, like, and I'm not saying that people aren't allowed to have their opinions.
Oh,
Most
absolutely.
of the time, other people's opinions don't bother me as much. But it's like when all you hear about it, and if it's something you like, all you hear is this negative stuff, it kind of makes you feel bad. It's like, well, are they judging me for liking something that is supposedly irredeemable?
It
or
starts
like,
to pervade your psyche, and
does.
that's what happens in wrestling. I wanted
yeah.
to bring it back around to the wrestling.
It happens in wrestling. It happens in music. It happens in movies. All this
Anything
stuff.
that's subjective, right?
Yeah.
And I caution, anybody
and people take their own opinions as objective fact.
Yeah.
And that's like when they refuse to see things from other people's points of view. And that makes it difficult to like have the confidence to put your own point of view out there, because it's like you feel like you have to defend it all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And I understand people are going to have their opinions. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just like at a certain point you also have to give other people some grace and
You're not wrong for not liking something.
Yeah.
And you're also not wrong for looking out these tropes and these subplots and seeing the glaring flaws in things. I understand that, but at some point you have to realize that you're biasing your own cynicism to set yourself up to really never enjoy things, because
it is.
If you're only gonna pick it apart.
And at a certain point, you have to take a look at yourself. If you're not, like, if you're negative about most things, maybe you have to find like the reasons why you don't like something. Just because it sucks, that's not a valid criticism. At least have a reason for not liking something. Like there's so many like bands and movies out there, and like I'm not going to name names, but like they're like, sometimes I feel like people bash certain artists or movies because it's like the cool thing to do. And I'm like, okay, do you really feel that way about this person? Have you really seen this or listened to this? Or are you doing this just because it's cool to bash X, Y, and Z?
And that becomes its own thing, right?
I know, and that drives me up a freaking wall.
Yeah, it does me too, but what are you going to do? People are weird. People are people.
But yeah, man, we could talk for hours about this.
My default is I just kind of laugh at the whole thing, because I just feel like we all take so much of our lives so seriously that it's just
we do.
There's so many things that are just not. You ever there's like in psychology they tell you like is this going to matter 6 days from now, 6 months from now, 6 years from now?
That's a good question to ask.
That's a really important thing to always kind of keep in the back of your mind, because that will ground you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that'll keep you more firmly rooted in reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That got really kind of esoteric there.
I love it, man.
I want to go back to talking about wrestling, because like, you're a bigger mark than anybody I know.
It's true. I'm a big mark.
So, I only watched WCW as a kid growing up. I started watching in '96 when the NWO was a brand new thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I watched it probably until about 2000, right to the end there. I think I did watch the last episode with, Ric Flair, and it was Ric Flair and Sting, wasn't it? On the last, So I didn't know a lot about wrestling. I've only recently through YouTube started watching all these old.
The funny thing is, like,
things.
I watched it when I was a little kid, and then I stopped from like '94 to '99. And I missed out on so much good stuff. That's probably why I keep on watching now, because I have that fear of missing out.
I feel like that was the golden era there. Well, okay, I would say the '80s was the golden era. It was a golden era. Yes, thank you. It was a golden era. I started watching it again when like my cousin told me like Jack, you gotta watch Hogan's back in the red and yellow, and then that's when like Austin and Rock were happening, and kids at my school were talking about it. I'm like, oh, right on, wrestling's pretty awesome. Yeah.
So I mean, I've gotten to catch up, on those years, and I knew a lot about what happened, but it's like, I missed out on that in real time. But it was what it was.
I was always a Ric Flair fan. I wanted to be
so
Ric
funny.
Flair. I'm just gonna say that right now, like.
His old interviews are so freaking hilarious.
It's insanity.
He's so over the top.
Dude, that guy on the car ride in, he would think of like what he was going to say, and then he would just go out there and totally riff those interviews and just kill it. Absolutely kill it.
Yeah, like, he's one of those guys. It reminds me of like David Lee Roth here in one of his interviews, where it's like Dave has that like certain level of swagger where he could say stuff that no one else could get away with.
Yeah, no doubt
And
about
like, if it was anyone else, they'd be like, dude, you're ridiculous. What are you even talking about? That makes no sense. But like, if it's like David Lee Roth in his prime, you're like, hell yeah.
it. Yeah, whatever he said.
Life ain't nothing but a kick in the pants, so let's dance. Like, what?
Well, much like Ric Flair, I think cocaine's a hell of a drug, man.
Like, what are you even saying? But like, I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, right on, dude. Hell bent for leather. Okay.
Yeah, this is good.
And
You know,
like
it's funny. I remember one time you said that we were talking about Dio. We were talking about Holy Diver, and you're like, yeah, man, Ronnie, whatever, ride the tiger, dude. Like, yeah, whatever you say, Ronnie.
Dude, you got to bleed for the dancer? Okay,
that was
I'm
it.
in.
Thank you.
I'm in, Ronnie. Whatever you say. You know,
it's that charisma, man.
Some guys can just do it. Like, I mean, like Dwayne Johnson, he can call someone a popcorn fart and get a big reaction. Like, if anyone else said that, they'd be like, you're an idiot. Stop it.
Do you look back in hindsight in the whole what thing? Do you just find that like supremely annoying with the crowd?
Yes, I do. Yeah. And that lasted so much longer than it needed to. When people chant it for no reason. And I mean, it was great when Austin did it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because he had so much fun with it. But like, it got to the point, like, there was at one point when that first, like, where people were starting to do that during the national anthem, and I'm like,
come on,
stop it.
It's like,
especially like long after Austin had gone, and part of it was like the way people delivered promos, because they'd have those pauses and people would throw a what in there, and I'm like, stop it with the what. Can we please retire the what? Oh, I'm done with it.
Hey, that's a thing, allowing people to actually do promos that aren't scripted.
Yeah, imagine that. By the way, Undertaker had the best like counter to the what thing. One time, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but there was like one promo he was doing, and people were just whatting him left and right, and he just like turns like, say what if you sleep with your sister?
Was that when he was the American Badass character, or was he?
Yeah, it was before he went back to being Dead Man, but I'm like, that's the best.
Yeah.
Because people were like, what? Oh.
I mean, is it, Taker's universally liked.
All right.
He's the
Fonz. Like, there's nobody cooler than him.
That's a great analogy, no doubt.
Yeah.
I've watched so much Taker on YouTube, because I didn't watch WWF or WWE. Screw you, Vince. WWF.
Right.
And
screw those pandas.
Yeah, but reliving it now, it's a brand new experience as an adult. It's been really cool, man.
Yeah.
He did so much. That was what a wonderful kayfabe idea, and what a great character, man.
And it's like, I don't know if anyone else could have gotten that character over the way Mark Calloway did.
No way. It had to be
you got to check out the documentary he did, The Last Ride, where it's like he's talking about all the
I want to watch.
Like,
I haven't watched it. I got to remember to
cool
watch
just
it.
kind of getting to know him as the dude, as a real guy, like the man behind the persona. Like that's as fascinating to me as anything else. Just like getting to know him on that level.
Well, knowing that he was the guy in the locker room that everybody went to is kind of like the liaison. It just makes him, just that much cooler in my book, because just the amount of respect. Not that he demanded, that he was just given because of his, work ethic and his just amazing personality, right?
For sure, man. Dude, I feel like we could talk for this for like 5 hours. I'm so glad I finally
Perhaps
got
there needs
you
to be a part 2, because I'm
maybe, man. I think we definitely need to do this again, and
sure.
And as many times as you want. But like, I'm so glad that after all this time, I finally got you on my show to reconnect with you. I love you, man. This is awesome. Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, this was really great. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to run my mouth.
Anytime, bro. Anytime you got something that you want to plug or you put out there, or even if you just want to shoot the breeze for a little bit, just let me know.
YouTube.com/jcamp2112. That's my YouTube.
Yeah, man.
If you want to
see some of his old YouTube videos on there.
My one-man band stuff. That's what I do. I'm a living room rock god. Because I got to work for a living, folks.
Hell yeah, man. No, I'll drop a link in the description for people who want to go check out Jon's old YouTube channel. This has been great, man. Thanks for doing it.
Oh, thank you so much. Let's do it again soon.
Thanks once again to my buddy Jon Campagna. Just great guy, super talented musician, and good producer as well. In addition to being an airline mechanic, he has a great YouTube channel, which YouTube.com, search for jcamp2112. I'll post a link to it in the description. But he has some really great videos that I definitely recommend you checking out. He just does some great cover renditions of some classic stuff. So you'll definitely want to go check it out. And make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram at jackxconnor. Make sure you check out my Facebook at facebook.com/jackconnormusic. Also, feel free to check out my band, Vertebraker, at facebook.com/vertebrakerband. And I also play with a band called Mature Musical Pictures at maturemusicalpictures.com. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, make sure you email me at jackconnorpodcast@gmail.com, or you can tweet me with the hashtag Phoenix Report. And I've been doing a lot of reaction videos lately, a lot of music video reactions, a lot of trailer reactions. The music reactions are a lot of fun because a lot of times they're stuff that I don't normally listen to or maybe I've never heard before. And but they're a lot of fun, so I definitely recommend you check them out. Thank you guys, as always, tuning into the Phoenix Report. I am Jack Connor, and I'll see you later.